Edward Muybridge was an English photographer who was important for his groundbreaking work in photographic studies of motion and in motion picture projection. His first study was The Horse in Motion in 1882. This clip was regarded as the first moving picture which led to foundations for the modern cinema. The Horse in Motion is a series of galloping racehorse which was the first animal ever to be shown in movie image format. The Lumiere brothers had innovated the portable and much lighter. This has inspired by Thomas Edison. The brothers had issues with Edison's device. Firstly, it was bulk. Secondly, the nature of it, because the viewer could only experience the film at a time. The first ever film made in 1895 was created by them, and it was called The Arrival of a Train. The video is only 50 seconds long, and it's a one shot of train that pulls into a station and the passengers go back and forth on the platform. This film has attained fame, entering film history as an icon of the medium's origins. Even though they invented the motion pictures, they gave up on it because they thought the cinema had no future. While in America, Thomas Edison knew that his camera, which was called a kinetoscope, was failing because the Lumiere brothers' camera was gaining popularity, so Edison bought the phantoscope from Thomas Armat, and then he renamed it as the Edison Phantoscope to show he owns it. In 1896, George Meillet discovered that objects started to appear, disappear, or transfer to other objects. From this instance, he discovered that the cinema had the capacity to manipulate and distort time and space. He was the discoverer of special effects, which included like the first double exposure, the first split screen with performers acting opposite of themselves, and the first dissolve. In 1915, D.W. Griffith created a film called The Birth of the Nation. The Birth of the Nation had a massive impact in the film industry as it was responsible for creating auto-in camera angles, dramatic close-ups, breaking scenes into multiple shots, natural acting, flashbacks and cross-cutting. These methods had molded continuity editing. In 1917, Russia, Lenin had discovered the potential of film and what it could be used for. He had hired 3 men to create different films based on Russians' problems at the time. The first man was Lev Kuleshov, who created mental phenomenon by having viewers get more meaning from the relationship between 2 shots rather than a single shot. The second man is Zyag Vertov. He created Man with the Moon Camera, which is an experimental silent documentary film with no story and no actors. Its purpose is to present the life of Soviet cities like the Odessa, Moscow, Kharkov and Kiev. Final man is Sergei Eisenstein, who directed the battleship Potemkin. Within this film, there is a famous sequence which is known as the Odessa Steps because it introduces concepts of film editing and montage to cinema. Jean-Luc Godard films challenged the conventions of traditional Hollywood with French cinema. In addition, he was considered to be part of the French film movement called the La Nouvelle Vogue. In 1960, Jean-Luc Godard directed a film called Breathless. It is considered very influential as it brought a new style for French filmmaking. It was famous for using jump cuts.
The 80-degree rule is the guideline that's used to show the on-screen relationship between a character and another character or inanimate object in a scene. The rule allows the audience to connect with a movement that cannot be viewed behind the immediate subject, which means the camera should move at least 30 degrees between shots of the subject. A jump cut is used during the editing process in which 2 sequential shots of the same subject are taken from camera positions that vary. This gives the effect of passage in time and fracturing the duration to move the audience ahead. A montage is an editing technique in which shots are juxtaposed in an often fast-paced fashion which compresses time and conveys a lot of the information in a relatively short period. A montage's primary focus is to inform and not create emotion. Motivated editing is when an edit breaks the illusion of continuity. When there's no reason for a different shot, a motivated cut is the least disruptive. For example, when an actor looks to one side in a dramatic scene, it cuts to whatever the actor is supposed to be seeing. Continuity editing is the main style of film editing in the editing of the post-production process of the film industry in narrative films and TV. The purpose of this editing is to smooth over the original discontinuity of the process, thus implants logical coherence between shots. Parallel editing, also known as cross-cutting, is when there's alternating two or more scenes that often happen at the same time but in different settings. The purpose of using parallel editing is to add interest to a bland scene. This also shows how cuts can be used to show different directions of movement. In film, a cutaway shot is the interruption of a scene by showing a view of something different to what the audience is seeing. This is often at the start of a scene or midway through when a character travels to a different area and a shot of the place they go to, generally a building, to show where the character is and give a small amount of context which shouldn't need to be explained with speech. This is often shown in the TV show Friends, and the same shots are often used over and over in long-running shows that stay in the same areas, or like in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. An insert is a shot of a part of a scene filmed from a different angle or sometimes a long distance from the original length of that scene. They usually cover what's already happening in the scene but emphasise a different aspect of the action due to the different framing. Inserts can also be used as cutaways. Point of view shots or cuts record the scene from a particular character's viewpoint. POVs are objective angles, but seeing as though it falls between objective and subjective angles, it should be placed in a separate category. The camera is positioned at the side of a subjective character whose viewpoint is being depicted so that the audience is given the immersion that they are standing cheek to cheek with the off-screen character.
In editing, there are set principles behind it, so the editor can follow the guidelines whilst in the editing stage. The principles consist of storytelling, combination of shots, and creating pace. Storytelling is a vital part in the filmmaking process, thus the editing has to be really good so the story structure in the film doesn't break. If there wasn't any editing in film, it could result in a distorted and confusing mess. Combination of shots is essential to the creation of narrative space and to the establishment of a narrative time. What editing does with these shots is that it creates a relationship between these combination of shots and process by which they're combined. These relationships are graphic match or match cuts, which are used when relating two completely different scenes by establishing a relationship between two. By the ending of one shot with a frame containing the same object as the beginning frame of the next shot, thus a relationship is constructed between the two shots with a smooth and clear transition. Rhythm editing principles describe an assembling of shots and/or sequences according to the rhythmic pattern of some kind, which is usually amplified by music. Spatial relationships, which basically consist of using different shots, like establishing shot, which is used to immerse the audience into the setting or to introduce new characters. Shot reverse shot, which is used for dialogues between characters. Eyeline match shots, where a character is looking at something that immediately cuts to what the character is seeing, and cut-ins or cutaways, where they are used to bring in the audience into or out of the setting. And finally, temporal editing, which is when a shot works with the tempo of the scene, which can be split into two different types of editing techniques, which are match on action and parallel editing. Creating pace is the way of how the time goes through the movie, so it could match the atmosphere of the scene. So if it's intense or a relaxed scene, the time could be expanded because the longer the shot, the more slow the build-up is. Or if it's an action-packed scene, it can be condensed because the shorter the shot, the faster it is. In many scenes, editors use different methods of drawing in the audience into the scene, like using a vocal element when the viewer is drawn into something immediately. Rule of thirds, when the images in the scene are cut into thirds, thus at the intersection of the lines, something interesting has to be placed on one side, but it's followed up by something on the opposite side of the intersection.